Welcome back. This is a new segment that Julie and I have been teasing you guys with for the last few days. We're calling it Fun Fridays. That's the working title for today's podcast and every Friday's podcast. And what we're going to do is on Fridays, we're going to talk about the things that we have been reading and paying attention to. And some of these things are fun, some of them are irreverent, and some of them, frankly, are going to help you guys make money. But we are not promising this to be a real drilled down real estate podcast. So yes, you've come here for real estate coaching and training, but we are going to sprinkle in a little bit of good old-fashioned goofiness to make it so that you can enjoy today's show and add a little levity. And I'll tell you the reason that Julie and I do this is that we have been in the, this year we've been married for 34 years. We've been in the coaching and training business for over 20 years. And a lot of what we say on a podcast and coaching and the books we write and all the content we create, all the other things, it's essentially what we've been doing for a long period of time, and we obviously update it all the time. So we're going to tell you in essence what you should do to build your business and make money in real estate and help other people, but it's not that dissimilar from what we told you 10 years ago. That can lead to us getting really chronically bored and getting burned out because it's essentially, at the end of the day, that is what anybody has to do if they're ever going to be successful at anything. It's called repetitious boredom pays off. You get to the point where you're unconsciously competent. You don't have to, I'm not even thinking as I talk because I've said all these types of things before. On Fridays, today, you're going to hear Julie and I doing a lot of stammering.
Yes, and finding our links and things like that.
You're going to hear us doing a lot of thinking. You're going to hear us not so elegant and eloquent because we're talking about things that are new to us, because what we're intentionally doing is trying to enter in new thoughts that are going to keep our mental energies flowing so that we can get better at what we do. And you guys should maybe consider doing the same things. And what we're going to do again is we're sprinkling into your minds the things that are of interest to us. And if you guys show ideas or suggestions, the best thing you can do is obviously just message us over on Instagram, and it's at Tim and Julie Harris. Make sure you follow us when you're there.
Now, I feel like we should say something. If we have some listeners where this is your first Tim and Julie Harris podcast, tell them how they can refer to our normal Monday through Thursday show and the notes and the newsletter and all those things.
Or maybe we don't tell them and they just listen today and they think we're nuts.
Could
yeah,
be.
I mean, that
Right.
actually might be more
Okay
interesting.
with that.
No, but obviously our podcast, we do it every single day. We have literally thousands and thousands and thousands, something like 7,000 or 8,000 past podcasts. So if you're really looking for, high-level coaching, and well, it's not really coaching. What we're doing is just training and presenting. Coaching is what happens when you join Premier Coaching. So a lot of you love this podcast. You listen every day, and I know some of you are just using this as your primary source of education with regards to your real estate career. But you got to understand, this is nothing other than an overview, not even an overview really, of what you learn in Premier Coaching. So the next natural step for all of you, whether you're just listening to today's Wackadoo show or one of our normal shows, is just definitely join Premier Coaching. Premier Coaching, all you got to do is go to premiercoaching.com, or you can just text the word Premier to 47372. Or if you're over on YouTube or Stitcher, Spotify, whatever, you can just scroll down below and click the link in the show description below again and just check out Premier Coaching. Scroll down the page, you'll learn what it's all about. You can join Premier Coaching right now for free. It's the way for you to continue your professional career development and also to take it to the next level with your relationship with the real estate industry and certainly with Julie and I. So Julie, if you have, let's just get right to your first point. The first point Julie came up with, and I'm reading her notes now for the first time. It's a little bit academic, but this is something that Julie and I have literally been paying attention to since the housing crash. And there's something that's absolutely spectacular that's happening in the real estate industry that nobody except Julie and I have not heard anyone else talking about this. Is really explaining to the real estate industry why this could be a miraculous thing that's about to happen. And so without any further delay.
So let's talk about Fannie and Freddie a little bit. So some of the things we talk about on the Friday show will be loosely related to real estate and some will not. This is something that is kind of been let out of the gates lately. And this is a bit more in your wheelhouse to talk about.
You want to give the history?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically 2000, just summarizing it, and I'm going to get some of my facts wrong. Like I said, this is not stuff we're experts on. But basically, Obama administration put Fannie and Freddie into conservatorship, which basically meant it was under their complete control of the government, which meant it was in essence a violations of the Fifth Amendment, specifically as pertains to the takings clause. So the government essentially took over private entities as Fannie and Freddie and essentially made it so that the owners of the equity in the companies were screwed. Basically, that's what happened. Now, this was not supposed to be a permanent thing. Conservatorship, it wasn't bankruptcy, it wasn't anything like that. It was just supposed to be for a certain amount of time. Well, now it's been 16 years. And the Trump administration is going to bring it out of conservatorship. It's going to bring it out of conservatorship, and that's going to completely change the real estate industry. Now, a lot of people who are anti-private industry and keeping Fannie and Freddie and all the rest of it, their rationalization for wanting to keep the government in control of housing, I'm not even going to talk about the political implications of that, but I will say this. Fannie and Julie's going to share with you the facts. Fannie and Freddie are some of the most profitable companies on planet Earth. And they have created billions and billions of dollars of profit. And that money has basically been used, essentially been sent to the Treasury, and the Treasury Department then has been using it for little earmarked political projects, mostly for new energy or green or things like that. And so the people that you hear, and it's not very many of them, but that, Mark Zandi and there's somebody else, I think, who are anti-Fannie and Freddie going back into being private entities, it's because they probably, don't know it for sure, but it makes sense that they do, have leanings towards the benefit, like the honey hole is going to essentially be sealed over, and the cash flow and the profits are going to flow back to the shareholders. So I think I got most of that right.
Yes. So why should you care? Why are we bringing this to you on our Friday show? It's certainly something for you to watch as people who are in real estate for a living. And it may be something that you would personally want to invest in. We're not your stockbrokers. We have invested in it. We are your podcasters and real estate coaches.
But do understand, Julie and I have invested, and we have been investing for a long period of time, and Fannie and Freddie, because we knew eventually it would come out of a conservatorship, and it is. And just to put it in perspective, nobody knows what the equity is going to be worth. The word on the street is that the Fannie and Freddie are going to have an IPO, and if that happens, Fannie Mae traded most recently for like $4.70 or something like that per share. It's believed at the very least the equity is going to be worth is around $30 to $35 a share. And some people are saying if there's an IPO, it's going to be worth closer to $100 to $150 a share.
Similar. What's it trading for today, just to give them
Well, I just said, right, $4.50 or something like that.
So there's a huge potential upside.
Right. So that aside, why is this important? Because what's going to happen, and you guys can read this, is as soon as Fannie and Freddie come out of conservatorship, you're going to see a deluge. Yes.
Deluge. D-E-L-U-G.
Yes, thank you. Of new mortgage products, because you're also going to see a lot of the big banks that are going to become competitors with Fannie and Freddie. You're going to see essentially market forces are going to take over the mortgage industry like we've never seen before. Some people are saying, well, the average cost of a loan is going to go up by $1,200. And you look into and you read about where they're coming up with that. That's called a guess. They have no freaking clue. And what most likely is going to happen, well, you all tell me, if there's more competitors in the mortgage space, there's more people that are essentially offering mortgages, and not just, these Fannie and Freddie don't originate mortgages. They essentially buy mortgages and repackage them and sell them. So if all of a sudden Fannie and Freddie have competition from the big banks, and all the big banks now are essentially able to offer the whole mortgage process for less than Fannie and Freddie, which is inevitably what's going to happen. The big banks have already said they're going to get into the space and become competitors with Fannie and Freddie. That's going to drive down mortgage rates. That's going to create new types of mortgage products. That's going to allow more, because market forces are going to take over, and that's going to, again, have an enormously positive effect on the real estate industry. Nobody's paying attention to this outside of some very weird wonkish types. Bill Ackman from Pershing Square Capital and some other people. But mark our word, within the next 30 days or less, you write this down, everybody and their brother is going to be talking about Fannie and Freddie. Julie
especially after the inauguration.
Especially after the inauguration, especially after Trump says that he's going to be making Fannie and Freddie's release from conservatorship something he's going to do within the first 100 days. That will release the dogs of war and going to create more positive winds at our back in the real estate industry than we would even have from maybe the interest rates dropping by a half point.
Yes, so in summary, something to be very enthusiastic about. It's absolutely in your wheelhouse. Pay attention to it just from the mortgage standpoint, but also perhaps as an investor. We know a lot of you listening are investors. Okay, so let's lighten it up just for a little bit. I'm still keeping it slightly in housing. So how to buy a house in Italy for just $1.
So why did this article in particular interest you?
Well, I mean, everybody talks about an affordability crisis. We were in Italy over the summer, and I think it's very intriguing what happens to some of these ancient towns. So selling homes to Americans for $1, this is something I found in Forbes. And let me just scan down to the interesting stuff. Okay, so how do you do that? Well, You can breathe, it says, to breathe new life into the village and attract a range of expats. There's a company that's offering a 3-tiered program. The $1 home is what it's known for. These are old properties that require some renovation.
And by old, they mean,
It's sort of ancient,
Yeah.
with estimated costs ranging from $21,000 to $52,000. Buyers are expected to commit to the renovation within 3 years and may need to pay a guarantee to prove their dedication. Okay, now, if you want to skip the fixer-upper experience, the same company has move-in ready homes in Italy for $105,000. And if you're a digital nomad who dreams of working remotely from an Italian island, they have free temporary housing for a few applicants. And I've seen a map of this. There's like, I don't know if it's in this particular one. It's something like 20 different towns in Italy have these homes for $1.
France is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And Portugal is doing the same thing.
Well, yeah.
Let's just get to the essence of it,
Sure.
right? So a lot of these countries have, if you look at a map of Italy, for example, you got to realize in all these countries in Europe how small they are. They're tiny.
Yeah, it's like a U.S. state, basically.
In Italy in particular. So if you go and buy your $150,000 house in Italy, it's going to probably be in the Tuscany region, which means to get anywhere, it's probably, if you wanted to get to a major airport, it's maybe, if you're in the most isolated sort of idyllic Italian village, backing up to a beautiful mountain or something, you maybe are 90 minutes away from a major city. Maybe. Look at a map. And so what we anticipate is going to happen because of this is, frankly, a lot of people are looking for places to retire around the world. It makes sense that they're going to start buying more of these types of homes, but their homes are already going to be, essentially turnkey. Now, you can also get a passport doing it this way. You can also, get dual residency, just all kinds of different advantages.
Related to this, it's not in my lineup for today, but I read an article this morning that listed 7 different countries. They were all European countries, where if you have a grandparent who moved to the U.S. from one of those countries, you can automatically, with application, of course, and proving it, get a dual passport.
Now, what's the advantage of a dual passport as an American? Not really any, really.
It's kind of cool.
Because our passports work pretty much everywhere. But if you could be from a country where your passport doesn't automatically get you into a country that you're visiting, but U.S. passports pretty much get you anywhere. And yeah, I looked into that for Ireland, Julie, because obviously...
Yeah, Ireland is one of them.
Ireland, yep. And so
That's
I could immediately become an Irish citizen.
Wouldn't that be cool? I think it's just fun.
I guess, but
I
I like the warm weather here in Puerto Rico.
True. Okay, so moving on. Why you should always pay attention when mowing your lawn or landscaping.
Well, so
completely
again,
different.
before you pop from one to the other, just so they can follow along.
Yep.
I mean, this is another article that you found, and this was in Smithsonian Magazine. But actually, before you get to this next one, I want to actually skip down to this one.
Okay.
Because the gardening one, I actually read that because you sent it to me, and it was, frankly, it's not that, it's kind of just okay. I want to talk about that one.
Well, this is not what you.
Oh, okay. So
I don't have a specific thing.
I want to talk. So here's the one I want. You and I have been talking about this a lot, and I know you don't want to talk about this because you don't want to have people think we're crazy. But I don't care. I'm going to talk about it. It's fun. Okay.
Let it out of the gates.
There's 2 more things, and let's not use our notes.
Okay.
Okay, because we've been talking about this intensely on our walks. Julie and I have been trying to figure out what the hell's going on with the drones. I mean, that's what we...
I.e. maybe aliens.
Right, i.e. aliens. And so we were, and some of you guys are fascinated with it too. But what's really interesting is how we've gone in a very short period of time from having, basically if you talk, now look, just so you know, full disclosure, we really like this topic to the extent that when we were driving around the country in 2021, we actually drove to Area 51.
Roswell.
And we also drove to Roswell in New Mexico. And we went to all the strange museums because it's fun.
It's fun and it's
That's
different.
all. It's just fun. And it was fun taking Zoe to see the mummified
aliens.
Exactly, the bottled aliens. I mean, it was fun. Right? Now, that said, won't go back.
No. So there's a level of campiness and fun and just to mix it up, right?
But truly, Julie, when visiting Roswell, the thing that wasn't interesting wasn't the museum. It was the people.
It was the people visiting the museum.
People visiting
Ourselves
the museum.
included, perhaps.
Well, but that was what's really extraordinary.
Because we were just visiting as a one-off, right? There are people where that's like their vacation destination year after year.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they go, but when you're driving there and you're driving in Idaho and all these other places, I remember we were, driving through these big, vast open spaces, and all of a sudden you start seeing like really weird signs that are government signs, and you start saying, well, why the hell is this one saying, do not pass this particular line in this particular place in the desert? What the hell's going on?
We're not responsible for you.
And then, but there's no information about where why it is that on this particular stretch of road in the middle of nowhere, why it's so important that you don't stop your car and you keep on driving and the whole thing. And there were big swaths of land, government-controlled, federal government-controlled land that was like this. And it's like, I don't get it. What's going on? Well, we surmised when we were online as much as we could. The internet was spotty, but we figured, well, these must be where Minuteman,
missiles, yeah.
missiles.
Installations.
But there was nothing online saying what specifically about this particular area. So when we were driving to Roswell, New Mexico, and I'm not making this up, if you guys have had that experience, you'll know what I'm saying, is there are huge portions of land where you're not allowed to go there, where you can barely, you're not even supposed to turn your head, you're supposed to just look forward. And there's these creepy little frickin' signs everywhere that make no sense. And so, look, we have a fascination with the whole aliens thing because it's interesting. Now, why has there been more of these drone sightings? Why is there a higher level, I don't want to call it disclosure, but why has there been this higher level of conversation amongst, let's just say, normal folks talking about this particular topic? That's what I find fascinating.
Yeah.
Why are people wanting this information? Why are people seeking it out? What is it that people are hoping to discover from their exploration down Alien Alley? I really don't know.
Well, I think it's something we're all, of course, innately and historically curious about. There's been many, many movies about it. But I think right now, in the past, what would we say, 90 days, probably 120 days, it's the number of these drone sightings. It's the location of the drone sightings around military and government.
I've been saying it too. Why are we calling them drones? Why are they called drones? I mean, isn't that the very definition of an unidentified flying object?
Sure, it is.
But seriously.
Well, and people have asked mayors and governors and
they don't know.
And they're saying we don't know.
Right. Now, Trump said something which I thought was fascinating. He said, you guys remember this, right? He said, the government absolutely knows what they are. You know, there's no doubt the government knows what they are. He said the government even knows what the garage they might be flying out of.
Like there's no way that they don't know.
But then he said, but I'm not going to, what is it called, Westminster, his golf course that he had up in that particular area of Jersey. He said, I'm not going.
Bedminster, I think?
Bedminster, yeah. He said, I'm not going there this weekend. Now, I want you to think.
Yes, I said, or anytime soon.
Okay, so I want you to think about what he said. And he wasn't joking.
Curious.
So, at one hand, he said, he is acknowledging them. He said, the government should say what the hell they are. And then he said, they definitely know what they are. And then, as if he already knew but didn't want to say, he then said, I'm not going to anywhere where they are. That's what he said.
Exactly. So what will be interesting is once he's inaugurated where this story goes, whether there's some kind of disclosure about what actually is happening or what we do know. So I think this is a great example of lack of information causes speculation. And so what do you think it is?
Well, I think it's
they are.
Okay, so this will basically get us a lot of new listeners, or it'll make us lose all of our listeners. So from whatever, again, I'm stuttering and stammering because this is way outside of our wheelhouse.
It's okay. We want them.
Do I think that we have been visited by, foreign, whatever the hell you want to call them, aliens from other whatevers?
Yeah.
Most likely. Do I think the government knows? I think they do, most likely.
Probably, right?
Do I think the government has recovered things that are of unearthly origin? Most likely. Do I think that the government has been able to take some of that technology and use it to reverse engineer and create, say, for example, anti-gravity type things? Most likely.
And so do you think that these, quote, drones might be related to that technology? And maybe they're homegrown or not?
Okay, so the drone sightings, and if you go back to when I was in New York Times, when there were David Faber, I think was his name. Anyway, fighter pilot, they started disclosing and showing actual footage from fighter pilots of these drone objects following them, being able to do crazy ass things that obviously our physics won't permit for us to do.
Yep.
At the time I was coaching somebody who was an ex-Marine fighter pilot, a Hornet, F-18s. Remember his name? He had a really great name.
I don't remember.
I don't remember his name either. Yeah. He's probably listening, so anyway. Best name ever for just the coolest. Anyway.
Sounds like a fighter pilot.
Exactly. Yeah. That was the reason it was a cool name, like, Bob Rocket Ship or something. I don't know. Anyway, so he wasn't aware of it, and I had him watch these videos. I just sent him links. And then he gave me his perspective from an ex-fighter pilot. And he said, if that is real, I have never seen or ever studied or ever heard of anything that can move like that. And it's anti-gravity stuff. So now, move forward. What are the drones? The drones are most likely things that are of earthly origin, most likely developed from things that were of unearthly origin. And some, not all, of the objects that are being seen, that have been seen for a long period of time, are of earthly origin,
Right.
that are controlled by like Lockheed Martin or something like that. And so we have this advanced technology that we as the country has yet to disclose for all kinds of tactical reasons. But also then because we're going to have to answer the question, oh, that's a really badass anti-gravity drone. Where'd y'all get the idea?
Right.
Right? And then they're going to have
One thing leads to the next.
Exactly. Then they're going to have to say, well, it turns out in Roswell, New Mexico, back in 19 whatever, that we did create something.
Or even more recently, possibly.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think a majority of the drones, again, I'm using the word drones, and the UAPs, right, that are being seen are most likely U.S. I don't think I think the level of top secret is beyond, it's crazy.
Sure.
I do think what's happening is we are going to get full disclosure soon.
Yep.
And we're going to hear from the government that we have been in contact or we have found these types of objects before. Do I think that somebody in the government is on a first name basis with Bob the alien? No, I do not.
No, but it is. What kind of ultimately creeped me out a little bit about it, aside from not really knowing, and it'd be nice to know, and it would be great for y'all to disclose, was when we were at the holiday party a couple weeks ago, and one of my friends, Alicia from New Jersey, was showing this video from her on her phone. They've got a house in New Jersey. It was super dark at night, and she had all that, like drone after drone, lights flying around over her backyard, and had no way of describing what it possibly could have been. Wouldn't that freak you out in the backyard? I think it would.
Well, and here's the other thing. It's no doubt that these aliens, if you want to call them that, have a benevolent nature. And here's the obvious answer why. So first of all, let's think this through. If you're going to somehow, are they somehow in the deep ocean? Who knows? Are they coming from other universes or other places? Who knows? So let's just set that aside.
Let's just say they're here.
Let's say they're here, and let's say they have been here for a long period of time, since forever. Let's just say that's all the information we have. They obviously have some kick-ass technology that we don't have.
Clearly.
And if they didn't have a benevolent nature, if they weren't, essentially, if they wanted to hurt us, they would have done it a long damn time ago.
Yeah, we'd either already be, annihilated, become alien slaves, or
But of
otherwise.
course, maybe they did try to hurt us, and the aliens are the ones that reintroduced bell-bottoms.
That explains everything.
Exactly. All right. Anyway, so that's really, at the end of the day, when we do think this is going to happen soon, when the government starts to disclose that these things are, we don't know really what they are, but they have a benevolent nature. We've reverse engineered their technology. I don't think there's going to be any form of disclosure where the U.S. government's going to say, and guess what? We also have a little WhatsApp group, which it's us and the aliens. I don't think that's
WhatsApp.
Because here's the thing that's interesting. The aliens would know that the nature of man would be that would create a huge sense of insecurity amongst all of our global counterparties, right? So Russia and China, all the rest of it would say, well, why the hell are the aliens talking to the to those Americans, right? I mean, what the hell? What's going on there? And to create global unrest. So the aliens are, or whatever it is obviously smart enough not to probably be in direct communication with us at all. Some people are suggesting that the UAPs and the UFOs, or whatever you want to call them, are essentially offerings that were designed to give humans an opportunity to learn and study and develop their own technology. There's another working theory that all these things started to be seen after the first nuclear bomb was dropped, and that's what got them interested in us, because obviously, that the nuclear potential of destroying the Earth, do they really care about that? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But when you drop a nuclear...
Caught their attention, perhaps.
When you drop them, right, exactly, and it could be used outside of the Earth's orbit, right? They could use nuclear weapons in space. And so when they were probably watching us from afar, and they say, look at these dumbasses launching nuclear weapons on their planet. And what happens is, it's interesting, I didn't know this until recently, is when there's a nuclear explosion that goes off, obviously we can sense it around the planet, but the waves that come from that nuclear explosion actually go into the space, and they go interstellar. And so it's possible that the negative ramifications or the harm that we would do if we decided to, push the red button, as it were, wouldn't just, destroy us. It could destroy neighboring civilizations. And
so you're saying it may have put us on their watch list.
Exactly. And so or maybe make it so that they're going to make it so that we're not going to be, do anything dumb again. So who knows, honestly.
Something to watch.
But
certainly.
it's something to watch, not related with real estate. It's obviously a mental, emotional rabbit hole. Well, a mental rabbit hole that we go down because it's fun to talk about, and it has absolutely nothing to do with taking a listing.
Yeah, exactly. Out of the wheelhouse, right?
Okay, so I'd like to talk about one more thing.
Okay.
Okay, I want to talk to them about health stuff.
Okay.
Because this is something else you and I are really focused on. And this is Julie and I just vamping, and hopefully you guys are getting something from all of this. As you get older, dear listener, as many of you are in our same age group, you have a tendency to want to make your life last longer. And so you start paying more attention to things. And we're about to experience what is going to be an explosion, and not just, like nothing we've ever experienced before. AI is going to change the medical industry, but also the food we eat. Julie mentioned that we are in Italy. And when you're in Italy, I'll tell you one thing you don't see a lot of: fat people. When you're in Europe in general, you don't see a lot of fat people. And also the thing that's fascinating is when you read the ingredients, you maybe have heard of all this, but you may not have experienced it. We are there for we were in Europe for a month, so we really got to become, part of a lot of these little communities that we stayed in. And you look at the ingredients, their ingredients are like, it's not like, first of all, there's no high fructose corn syrup. There's no, all these things that that we're told are necessary to keep the food fresh in the United States. They don't exist in Europe.
Let me give you a quick example of that. I've been, as you know, trying to develop my pizza recipe.
Yeah.
Okay, and we love Italian, like true Italian pizza. And I was looking up, the pizza originated in Naples. Okay, so
well, that's what the people in Italy will tell you. Some people think it came from China. But who knows?
Let's just give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
So I looked up how to make like your traditional kind of flat, crispy Italian crust, because then you build your pizza from there, but you have to have the right crust. And to your point about ingredients, all it is flour, which is a kind of a refined flour that's a little bit more powdery. They call it 00 flour. I don't know all the technical terms, but flour. Okay. You have olive oil. You have sea salt, and it's supposed to be mineral water. That's it. A little bit of sugar sometimes to get the yeast activated, but it's not even necessary to have sugar.
You told me exactly. That was interesting. So
Yep.
where we are in Puerto Rico, so we're basically at sea level. You're not supposed to put any sugar in it.
Because of the humidity.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, so there's a little bit of variation, but what you don't have is a bunch of additives and preservatives and things that you can't pronounce. It doesn't take 14 different things to make a great pizza. And now, is that because they only had water, olive oil, and flour? Sure, but they haven't really gotten away from that. In fact, there's actually a law in Naples that says you cannot call this a Napoli pizza unless it's made out of these specific things. Not just salt, it has to be sea salt, and I think it's even a specific kind. It's a certain kind of olive oil. I think there's a certain kind of tomato that you have to use if you're doing a margarita pizza, which is what they're known for. And mineral water. Otherwise, you can't advertise that you're selling a Napoli pizza.
Well, and also when you're in Europe, you don't see a lot of the things like you go try to find a Diet Coke, for example. They don't exist. So all these things that we've normalized in our diets in America, they just don't exist.
Well, if they did exist, wouldn't you find them at a truck stop like we do here? And there's all this junk food. So tell them about what that looks like.
Well, I mean,
it's a deli. It's natural things.
She's saying when you're in Italy in particular, there's these, you call them a truck stop, but they're not. They're essentially like these delicatessens, like she said, that are just extraordinary, where it's all fresh food. What are they called?
Autodomo?
Autodomo, yeah. I think maybe that's what it's called. But it's amazing. I mean, I'd go to Italy again just to go to the truck stops, to be honest.
I know.
They're fantastic. And so anyway, the moral of the story is that all is going to be coming to the United States because, frankly, the change of administrations. And, so this has been a fascination of ours. And we're talking about, well, we're raising a Zoe, right? Our 11-year-old girl, she's had her birthday. And we don't want her eating all this crap. And I've been educating her on all of it and showing her in the ingredients. And if any of it sneaks into our house, she knows it immediately goes to the trash can, things like that. So it is very interesting as to why those things exist in the United States and they don't exist in other parts of the world. And when you research it, which I did in preparation for today's show, you'll find a lot of bullshit about how you need to be adding all these things to the food supply in order for the food to last longer, in order for the preservatives to do their thing and all the rest of it. And it's just not true. The truth is because the ingredients that they use largely in mass-produced food in the United States are cheaper to make if you're not using real food. That's the truth. And now here's what's really mind-boggling. When we were in Europe, and I pray all of you have this experience, And we're going to, did you decide that we're going to the Vatican City next year?
I'm still working on it, but I
Okay,
think
we
so.
have to go to Vatican City.
Yeah.
All right, so when you're there, what you're going to pay, and I want you to remember this, please remember this, the food is not more expensive, it is less expensive. So the idea that they need to use fake food, just all the things, because it would otherwise be too expensive and somehow we can't, feed all the people in the United States, it's all a freaking lie. Because when you're even in an expensive place like Germany or Switzerland or whatever, I am going to say it again, the food costs less, not more, and it's real food using real ingredients. So what has happened over time is that the food industry, you call it what you will, it has essentially co-op politics, and you're going to see a lot of bullshit that's going to happen over the next probably 90 to 120 days, where the big massive lobbies are going to try to beat the drum as much as they can, trying to make it so that the new powers that be are not going to have the influence to make all of these poisons that they've normalized for our food supply illegal. And that is what's going to happen, and I want you to pay attention to it because it is very fascinating. And now, aside from the financial motive for wanting to create fake food that is, in essence has been proven to cause a lot of really insidious diseases in humans, where's the other motivation? What is motivated? Why is, other than a financial incentive, I want you to really ask yourself, and I'm just going to leave it as an unanswered question. What is wanting us to be given food that causes us to have a dependency on essentially, drugs in many cases, or have or essentially have these lives that are full of, heartache and heart problems and,
So what you're connecting some dots here, right?
Well, I'm trying to without doing it. I want them to figure it out.
You've got all the crap that's in the food, which has an effect of making people, including kids, less healthy.
Right.
Whether that's making them fatter, that's making them have chronic other diseases and inflammation, all of these things. And then the next breadcrumb to follow is that leads to the dependency on medications, drugs, diagnoses, mental things. These things are all connected.
Did you guys know that in only place on planet Earth where you can be, where there's pharmaceutical companies that are advertising their wares is the United States? It is obscene.
That's another great thing about being in Europe.
If you go to Canada, if you go to Mexico, if you go anyplace else, you do not see all these horrible ads for these companies that are trying to get you to believe that you have this need for this particular drug. And I don't even understand how that's legal, to be honest with you. Oh, it's freedom of speech. Okay, whatever. But it's also essentially, oh gosh, all of it, Julie.
I know.
I mean,
you could develop a problem just by watching the commercials.
well, look, I sent you an article about this, and it was talking about the increase in colon cancers in children.
Yeah.
Which
Explain that.
is obscene. It's crazy. It's from all this fake food.
Yeah.
And okay, well, let's just go down the rabbit hole. You and I have been also talking a lot about vaccines, and not just COVID vaccine, but vaccines in general.
Sure.
And you did a lot of homework on this. Like when we were born and we were kids, and granted everything was black and white, and people were still on horse and buggy,
Yeah.
but the number of vaccines that we had to have
I think
was
there were
what?
6 or 8 total. You had
Yeah.
measles, rubella, smallpox, stuff like that.
And nowadays, how many is it?
There's, depending on which, quote, schedule you follow or are made to follow, there's up to 85 different vaccines or combinations of vaccines between the time that a baby is born and they're like, I think 12 or 13 years old.
Okay, so do you know that most of the vaccines that kids are taking nowadays are essentially the efficacy, did I say it right?
Efficacy.
Okay, has never really been proven out. In other
Meaning
words,
the effectiveness.
exactly, or the long-term ramifications of it. And yet these kids and many of these, being an anti-vaxxer is somehow you
must
being
be a kook.
You're a kook. You're a heretic to the people that think that it's the vaccines, and being a pro-vaccine person is almost like a religion. It's insane. Remember, I was talking yesterday about the books missing on the shelves? People have essentially been replacing that with this whole addiction to vaccine, this belief that vaccines, it's not just the vaccines themselves, it's the associated culture that goes, the white coat people, the trust the experts people. It has gotten out of hand.
Well,
but
it was politicized.
it's politicized, it's monetized, but here's what's really fascinating. The vaccine companies, or the companies, all of them that make these vaccines, cannot be sued.
That's right. There's no accountability.
There's no accountability, and the amount of money that some of these companies make from these vaccines is billions and billions and billions of dollars. So the vaccines, there's more of them. They haven't been proven to be useful. There's a lot of people that believe they're actually maybe causing some of these horrible long-term health problems. Some of these vaccines actually get in, and I believe they change your DNA.
Yeah.
They pass the brain.
What was the one that they said had only had like 5 days of testing in kids?
It was a form of the polio.
It was a
vaccine.
form of, okay, and so this is something, I did think that
New York Times
that
lied.
was very interesting about how they tried to make it. There was a headline floating around about how RFK wanted to end the polio vaccine. So they put that all into one bucket as the polio vaccine because they knew that would trigger everybody to say, oh my gosh, the polio vaccine's been around forever. How
And they were trying to associate RFK is trying to end the polio vaccine.
Yeah.
And it was a total and complete lie that you could still get the old polio vaccine, but this new one that had never been fully tested.
Which was for kids and babies.
Exactly. And so, again, we explored all this. We're interested. These are the things that we talked about.
Now, let me just take this, land the plane on that. What actually happened was he and the people that wanted to look into this were not saying even that we want to end that. What they were requesting is more information simply based on the fact that they'd only tested it for 5 days of what actually happens. Is it actually effective? What is the research behind it? They were just requesting documentation from doctors saying, hey, what's the real deal with this? Because this is a new thing for kids and babies. We want to know more information because maybe it's safe, maybe it's not, especially given the case that there's no accountability. If it's not safe, nobody can sue you over it. So it might be good to just know more about it.
Well, so we went to the doctor, obviously with Zoe. This is when she was much younger. And the doctor at the time was telling us of all the vaccines we had to look forward to. And Zoe looked forward to. And then one of the vaccines was this what was it, Julie? It was some, you guys can tell we're not talking about our wheelhouse right now. It was some venereal disease.
Oh, was it HPV?
HPV.
Yeah.
And they have some vaccine that, again, research this yourself before you have your little girls take it, because I did, okay? And it's not something you necessarily want your kids taking, but here they are talking about giving some little baby a vaccine for a form of venereal disease. I have a better idea. Why don't you teach your daughter not to have premarital sex, and that maybe will prevent her from getting a venereal disease.
Yeah, and let's probably not do that when they're like 2 years old.
Exactly. It just doesn't even make any sense. But the whole thing.
But the thing is that got us on this tangent is that, quote, vaccines have all been put into the same bucket. I think that was exacerbated by the back and forth about the COVID shot, right? So that you can't, it's hard to have a discussion about, hey, let's isolate this one thing. What's the deal with this? Let's get more research. Let's get some proof that it's effective before we go shooting it into our bodies, right? And how is it that we're not allowed to ask that question?
Yeah.
And so that leads us back to, watch what you're researching in your facts and do your own homework and don't just, fall into what somebody tells you to do.
Well, again, this is where, Julie, many of you have got to this same conclusion too. You ultimately have to be the purveyor of all the most important things in your life. And you honestly cannot really, you have
to be your own best advocate.
Exactly, for everything, for your health, for your wealth, your happiness, your relationship with God, all these things. The more you trust the experts, air quoting, the less likely you are to actually get advice that's going to be truly in your best interest. You can use them for, okay, I'll tell you guys, this is back on vaccines. Zoe never had the COVID vaccine.
Yeah.
And we had how many doctors?
All of them, basically.
All of them said, Zoe at the
Better
time, she had to have her tonsils removed, and one thing could have led to the other. And they were doing their best to scare the shit out of us. And I would not do it. I just will not I would not want her. Julie, at one point, one of the doctors basically had her convinced that we've got to get it done.
And the school was convincing us that you weren't going to go unless you did it.
And the school was basically saying, exactly, we're not going to let you back in unless you, and I would not do it. And we didn't do it. And I'm so grateful that we didn't do it.
In retrospect.
But this is the thing, is that Julie, look, I'm going to ask you a question because a lot of them maybe were working through the same thing. Mm-hmm. You were resolute about her getting the vaccine.
Yeah.
And you are somebody that doesn't naturally come to being a skeptic about things like vaccines.
True.
And you are somebody that needs to do more investigation, and so you can, where does that come from? Where does your desire to believe in the white coats come from?
Well,
because it's way more drilled down in you than it is me.
I think probably it's because I had some tendencies toward illness as a kid, and I look towards preventative measures. We're going on a trip, I'm taking antibiotics with us for the kid just in case. I think some of that is the mom and me wanting to be preventative. And I think the other thing that we'll all look back, not just me, but I think a lot of people look back at the COVID era, because we're not even that far out of that. I think it'll be really interesting, like 10 years out of it, that in the moment where we didn't know how bad it was going to be and for how long it was going to be, I felt like I had a strong desire to get back to how are we going to just manage this. And so I had a tendency to believe, well, and I, the doctors that we called, I trust the doctors. So I don't know. I think
Why? Why do you just automatically trust the doctors? Because I definitely
they have the education that I don't have
well,
on those things.
But the thing is that doctors and all these experts.
But the more I've had to talk to doctors as we get older and go through things, the more skeptical I get, either by watching our parents go through medical things, having coaching clients that have gone through different things, and then our own experience. And let's bring it back to something of our own lives, like we were talking about. We're going to have our lenses replaced.
But
right?
let's talk about that in a second. I want to go
Wouldn't
back.
you trust the eye doctor?
Well,
No?
the reason ultimately you have to be your own best advocate when it comes to these important things, and we're going to stay on the healthcare theme evidently, is that you don't know to what extent the doctor really knows anything about what it is that you just asked him or her about. So you're assuming these doctors have all the answers. They're like Chat GPT. They are not. Most of these doctors got their education when they got their education. They decided to become general practitioners. Maybe they're specific nose, ears, and throat and whatever else, right? That's their drill down. And they don't know much about anything else. And I've had coaching clients, for example, we'll talk about this maybe later, but that have started on hormone replacement therapy for men. And I shared, again, we can talk about this on another show or later. It depends where we flow here. Again, no outline for today's show. Is that I went through that process. I'm on HRT. I've been on HRT for a long period of time. I explored it for probably 5 years prior to me starting on it. I was curious about it. But when I went to talk to doctors, they would give me this information that was incongruent with the other things that I was reading by people who actually specialized in hormone replacement therapy through blood tests and knowing the different numbers and the rest of it. So the more I got, and so that, like just for example, guys, I meant this literally for the guys, is that your testosterone is on a range from, if I remember correctly, from 300 to something like 900 or 1,000, I forget. And so that's the range that's considered to be the normal range. But most everyone, once they reach about 45 in men, their testosterone level is going to be on the lower end of the range, where the ideal part of where you want to be, the sweet spot for most men, where you feel the best, is going to be in the 800s. Again, women similar, but not exactly the same, and truthfully I haven't studied as much. So with men, if you go have your blood test and they tell you your T level is like,
in the normal range,
287 or 301 in the normal range, and if you do that and you ask your GP, that's what they're going to tell you, because they don't specialize in it. Hopefully you guys are getting something from what I'm saying. So you have to do and that's the beauty of podcasts. That's the beauty of knowing, this interconnected world that we live in. You can actually find out who the best of the best is at a particular subject, and then you can go and explore it, and then you all of a sudden can start, basically going down your own path of being your own best advocate.
Well, so in retrospect, to go back to the Zoe issue, instead of asking a pediatrician, who I naturally should trust because she's known Zoe since she was born, but she is a kid generalist, essentially. The path that I should have followed would be to maybe talk to an immunologist or somebody that was their wheelhouse, similar to you, comparing like a GP,
Actually,
you're in the range, versus somebody who specialized in HRT.
I will suggest that is a correct answer, but what you really should have done, and what hopefully everyone is going to do, is they need to check their presuppositions about what their belief structure is.
Sure.
And this is true with any aspect of life. So what I did, and I tricked you into learning it too through making you listen to podcasts when we were driving around, is that I found people that were not in alignment with the government's perspective on the COVID vaccine. And there was 2 doctors, and actually ended up being 3 doctors in particular, and I found all their freaking interviews. And when you and I would go on long drives, I would play them and you started listening. I didn't say, Julie, listen to this.
No.
I just played it like I normally would a podcast, and that's how you started learning.
Right.
So what I did is I sought out information that was countervailing to the dogmatic approach that was being shoved down all of our throats.
Okay, so let me take this full circle for our coaching clients.
In other words, I tricked you.
I know, I got it. So to apply, remember how we coach them about this can be a mindset thing, right? So what is it that you believe? You were just talking about examining what your presuppositions are. What do you believe? Do you know that that's actually 100% true? Become a little bit of a skeptic. What are you doing, or what are you believing? Who are you because you believe that? And to your point, looking at the counter to that, what if you didn't believe that? what is the counter to that? What if you flipped the story on that and said, well, maybe that's not actually true, and at least investigate that and at least educate yourself. And you do have to do this on your own, being your own best advocate and finding the information on your own, because the stuff that we were listening to, we had to search out. There's no way that was happening on mainstream media.
Nope.
It wasn't even coming from your own doctor.
Exact opposite. And matter of fact, if you are an absolute heretic, and you should be burned at the spike if you didn't believe in and everywhere you went, it was like, oh my God, you're not an anti-vax. Oh my God, you don't have your COVID. You don't have 14 COVID.
Right, and let's see your documentation.
Do you guys remember that? Do you remember the insanity of all
your
of it?
vaccine cards.
These were largely godless people. Sorry that again, I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone. That had essentially replaced the natural need for all of us to be connected to our Maker with essentially this sort of, this newfound religion, which at the time was big government.
Like, just tell me what to do.
Exactly, and that is what you saw it with your own two eyes.
Yep.
You experienced it. You saw what and now you realize it was all a lie, right? Do you realize it was all a lie, dear listener? It was all a lie.
Now, that's not to say, let's hover here for a second. Yes, hundreds of thousands of people did die of COVID.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that there wasn't a cohort of people, especially old people, people that had tendencies towards that, okay, that should have gotten the vaccine.
Right,
that's
but kids
true.
shouldn't have gotten it.
Right, that's the point, is that to have these blanket statements, everybody in the whole world needs to have this. And if you're not going to get on a plane, you can't go to a restaurant, you can't do this and that. I think that's where you've got to really do your own research, right?
I put a picture of, during this era, on Instagram of you and I getting our flu shots, and that was all it was. Actually, I think it was you getting your flu shot, and I was taking a picture, and I put that on Instagram.
Yeah.
And the amount of praise that we got from all the COVID people piled on. It was hundreds of comments because we had essentially taken the shot, and we're now officially part of their tribe.
Well, it's a badge of honor.
It was like a rite of passage in order to be part of that club. And look, I'm not judging, and I'm sorry if you guys think I'm being, literally preachy. I'm not. All I'm saying is it's very fascinating. If we look back on our most recent history, because I'm old enough to remember, 2 years ago, that it was insane. And it still has the potential to be insane again.
Well, I'm sure there's going to be lots of movies and lots of books about this. I saw something the other day.
I wonder, though, honestly.
Well, that was commenting on the fact that all of the inconsistencies, right? So they had an example of when you go to the grocery store, and there's still some grocery stores that have this, the big plexiglass between you and the checkout person. And yet that checkout person was not wearing a mask and was handling all of your food. So what is the point of the plexiglass?
Well, there wasn't
all of these different inconsistencies.
The 6 foot thing was
how about getting your food delivered from your Uber driver?
The 6 foot thing was made up. The vaccines were made up.
The masks were not that effective.
It turns out that it did come from the actual place in China where it's
Wuhan.
Exactly, all these things. So we're completely lied to. So if they lied to us like that, and they essentially locked off all of our homes for a long period of time,
they definitely know about aliens.
Okay, well there you go. Nice full circle. There's probably some other things we're going to be learning about.
There could be some things to be curious about.
I know. I want to talk about the scans, because that's going to have the most benefit for most people.
Yeah.
So this is the other thing that's miraculous that's happening in healthcare in particular. So AI I don't think will ever replace doctors, but AI are going to make doctors more accurate and more efficient, okay? So I'll just say it that way. I did have a fun conversation with Zoe's doctor. He was all like, you're not going to AI, are you? Well, I did, and the AI told me what the problem was before he did.
Right.
So, okay, whatever. But that aside, the thing that's happening right now, and I want all of you guys to be aware of this, is that you can have a full body scan. And these are not the types of scans where they use radiation to scan your body. Now, why am I telling you this? Because U.S. medical care has been designed not to be preventative, but to fix problems after they already exist. And we can talk forever about where the financial incentive aligns with why that's the way that medical care has emerged.
Fact.
But I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. It's just a fact. Exactly, Julie's point. But you can now, for relatively low fees, and it's getting cheaper, have a full body scan done maybe once a year, maybe once every 2 years. And it'll go through your complete body from head to toe, and it'll look at all of your everything, your heart,
organs,
your brain,
your
eye, your toes, your everything.
Yep.
And then it has an AI radiologist basically will look at it for anything that is any kind of aberration that might be a shadow, whatever. I'm not an expert at any of this. And then they send you, and then an actual radiologist and a doctor review the results, and then you get this full report. And then if you monitor this, if you go and start doing this, like Julie and I do this every year, if you go back and do it every year, they'll compare the previous results with the new results, and the AI is going to say, well, this is a little weird, and this is staying the same, so we don't need to worry about that, or maybe that. Now, this will help if this becomes affordable for most people, because insurance, oddly enough, doesn't cover this, but this will become something that's going to save billions of people from having really nasty health problems that a lot of times when they discover these health problems, it's oftentimes too late, or it's going to essentially incapacitate them for years. Whereas if they would have discovered it when they were in their 20s, well, this is a strange little thing. We're going to keep an eye on this. Okay, now you're in your 30s. That strange little thing. Let's just go ahead and have this looked at.
Well, there's tons of examples of that from the companies that do the scans. That's part of their marketing, but it's also true. The one that we use is Prenuvo, Prenuvo, which is opening up a lot of additional locations. I think they've got at least 12 or 15 in the country now.
We are not investors. We have no business relationship with them.
No, but when you go and you do your own research, as we've been talking about on this podcast, they have examples of people that had no symptoms whatsoever of anything. And they do the scan, and it's like something is glaringly obvious that just hadn't started bothering them yet, that would not have otherwise come out on a normal, like a yearly physical with your regular doctor.
Right. Well, lots and lots of examples. Personally, I don't even like talking about this stuff because it gives me the...
But that's the exact reason you do that.
Well, exactly. That is the exact reason.
So that you don't have to deal with it later in a worse fashion.
Exactly. So hopefully you guys are all taking that seriously. Do you want to talk about the lenses?
Yeah, well, so that's another example if we want to tie all of these things together, right?
Well, preventative health care.
Yeah.
So, again, these are passions that Julie and I have, obviously. And, some of you have been with us for a long period of time. You know that we're huge advocates of working out on a regular basis. We do kettlebells and just do all these different things. We want to look nice for each other. We want to look nice in general. I want to stay strong and healthy for our daughter and the whole thing. But really, we're just doing it for the sake of longevity and because it makes us feel great. And it's become habitual.
That's right.
Really, that's what it is.
And so you also, to get to the lenses, and maybe that'll be our last story for today. I have more if you want, but.
Well, we've gone from talking about Fanny Freddy, talking about aliens, talking about Italian
COVID.
Pizza. Okay.
That's true.
Talking
We've given them the variety show.
Exactly.
Okay, so those of you who wear glasses or contacts, you have to go and get your eyes examined. Either, like we live in Puerto Rico, it's every 1 year. Most places it's every 2 years.
We wear glasses. Most people, once they hit 45, are going to have some kind of corrective lens, something.
And if you want to update your glasses or your lenses or stay up to speed, you have to go to the eye doctor. Okay, so what are you really doing at the eye doctor? Yes, you're seeing whether your eyes have changed, what your current prescription is, but the eye doctor is there to sell you either contacts or glasses, right? So we started doing a little bit more research, and Tim, you did a great job on this, about actual lens replacement.
Well,
and I think people are familiar with, like maybe your grandma or your mom or dad had a cataract lens replaced. That's the traditional sense of this, but this is like next level stuff.
Right. So I hate glasses, and I've had to wear glasses when I was a kid. Then I didn't have to wear them because my eyes weren't getting any better and getting any worse. So as I was in my mid-40s, I have to wear glasses again. Glasses are a pain in the ass. Let's just accept them for what they are. And I did think, Julie just kind of went through this point really kind of quickly. But our local eye doctor, wonderful, wonderful guy, makes all of his money from selling frames. They don't make, it's like when you go to your dentist and the dentist basically doesn't make any money on the cleaning, they're looking for other problems because that's where they make all their profit. The eye doctor that you go to see, he's not making any money. Usually the examination is even free. He's making money like 300 or 400% markup on the frames that you're going to buy and the services basically to have your new glasses, right? And depending on your state, Texas is every 2 years, Puerto Rico, it's every 1 year. You guys get the point. So Julie and I, as a joke, call it big lens,
Yeah, exactly.
Because it does seem like, it's an interesting little, racket. And here's the little, Julie, she told you this, but it's fascinating. So my mom is 85. She lives with us. She's lived with us since Zoe was born. And when we were living together in Texas, she had cataracts, and she had one of her lenses replaced. And she had monofocal lens, which means that she now has 20/20 vision. I think it's in her right eye. So she can see distance-wise better than Julie and I. And we're more than 30 years younger than her. But she could see things at a distance that we can. But she has to wear glasses when she's reading. And when up close for finer detail things, she has to wear glasses too. So there are these lenses out. They're called premium replacement lenses. And there's different, you guys can do this research on your own. But what it does is it makes you so you see as well as you did in your early 30s, assuming you saw good when you were in your early 30s. It replaces your actual lens that you were born with, that God gave you. So what happens is you grow older, your lens loses its elasticity and its ability to focus. So when you're young, your lens can adjust distance, close up, easily, wherever it needs to be.
Like a camera lens opens and closes.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good analogy. So like if you have your camera set in automatic and it'll constantly change focus, and every time it changes focus, things are in perfect clarity. As we get older, essentially our lens loses the elasticity, has an inability to actually adjust. Now, LASIK is not what we're talking about. LASIK is something different where they change the surfacing of your eyeball. That's different. So if I were you and you're considering LASIK or premium lens replacement, look into the lens replacement before you do the LASIK, because a lot of times with the LASIK, you have to have that done again as you grow older, because guess what? Your lens is going to also need to be looked at because it's losing the elasticity, and no matter how many times you modify the outside of your eyeball with LASIK, you're still going to have the elasticity issue with your actual lens. So what these eye doctors, these surgeons can do is they go in and remove your original lens, and they install a lens that gives you 20/20 vision, distance, medium, and close up. And the only negative ramification, or the only negative side effect that happens in less than 5% of the time, is that people see halos around lights at night when they're driving in their cars or whatever, which, by the way, I see anyway when I wear glasses when I drive at night.
Yep.
So I don't know what I'm really, there's no risk for me. I'm already experiencing that. But the idea of being able to have 20/20 vision again, and I'm in my, now, oh my God, I'm 55 this year.
Holy cow. When did that happen?
That happened. Yeah.
Yeah, but how awesome is that going to be?
Yeah, I mean, so we're having that done this week, and each eye's 15 minutes per eye. You're not knocked out. They just, I'm not looking.
They knock your eyeballs out.
They give you something to make it so you're, a Valium or whatever the hell they give you, and then they anesthetize your eyeballs, and then boom, boom, and you can see right after the procedure, and the next day you're supposedly able. You can drive the same day.
And this is for life, right? You don't have to keep.
No, this is for life. Yeah, but you could, though. I mean, there are people
if
that
something new comes
right.
out.
If there's something new that comes out, you can have the lens replaced again and all the rest of it.
Very cool.
Yeah, but again, we're in this new age of essentially these massive revolutions that are going to be happening from. We haven't even talked about AI today. AI this year, I promise you guys, what we're going to be talking about going into 2026. AI is going to be something that we all just take for granted. We're now going to be talking about robots. Robots are going to come in the form of actual physical, helpers that are going to start being, transforming society as we know it, and they're all going to be operational through AI. And that's something that I wouldn't be shocked at all if, again, going into 2026, everyone's figuring out how to pay for their Apple robot or whatever the hell it's going to be.
There's a lot of stuff coming out about AI. I'm collecting some articles on that too.
Well, it is. It's incredible.
Yeah.
We're all living we're living in the best time to be on planet Earth. There's no doubt about it.
It's very cool.
Right. So we talked about a whole bunch of different things. What did you guys think? This is our Friday show.
Send us some ideas as well. I asked coaching clients if they come across something that's really fascinating to them, send it to us, and maybe we'll talk about it.
Yeah. So on Fridays, it's we're going to talk about what's of interest to us. But if you send us a suggestion that's of interest to us, that's what we're going to talk about as well.
Yes. Also, if you are living in Denmark and you have the pocket listing for Greenland, go you. I think that's going to be really interesting to see because Greenland is controlled by Denmark, and Denmark has said we're not for sale. And yet, isn't everything for sale for the right price?
Well, if your
name's
name's Donald Trump, it's all about making a deal.
You never know, right?
Them saying it's not for sale is just the opening salvo to a long.
Pocket listing.
If you're in Canada, if you think about the map, right?
No.
If you're in Canada,
You're
you got
next,
Alaska
buddy.
on one side,
Yeah.
you have Greenland on the other, and you're in the middle.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'd be thinking about that.
I'd be thinking about that.
Yes.
I don't know. Anyway, so that might be a future podcast. So what do you guys think? This is Julie and I being ourselves, talk about the things that personally interest us. And assuming it gets, doesn't have to, look, I'm stammering because I'm worried about some of the things we said.
Not our normal program.
Right. And some people are going to absolutely be mad and livid that we talked about all these different things.
Yeah, but
it's happened in the past, but it is what it is.
This is a continuation in some sense of what we did during COVID. We did a Sunday show that was
people
like
loved.
this. And people loved it. So it's not just us, saying, oh, we're bored with that.
I thought of one other thing I wanted to talk about.
What's that?
Actually, sorry. This is back in the guise of health stuff.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to give you guys some backstory. So it was actually during, you triggered this memory. It was during when we were doing our COVID Saturday podcast where we would have irreverent conversations like this. where they were starting to talk about semaglutide. And semaglutide is known commercially as Ozempic and things like that. And Julie and I were reading about it and thinking about all the amazing things that will happen if people are no longer fat. Because you'll be, your lipids, and people are going to be able to come off all these, all these things, all the things that basically
obesity-related problems.
Well, the number one killer of people in America is heart problems.
Right.
And the number one reason people have heart problems is because they're fat.
Yep.
So if all of a sudden they start, obviously there's some genetic outliers, but that's the reason why. So if all of a sudden people are no longer fat, that means there's going to be a lot of people that are going to live a lot longer, healthier lives. And but the semaglutide, which is a peptide, is something that was used primarily to help people with diabetes. So this was coming out, and this was back when it came out in the news. Oh, these wafer thin. You guys remember these headlines? These yoga ladies are taking this peptide called semaglutide, and as a result, the supply of semaglutide is being
diabetics are being
being sucked out as people try to lose their last 5 or 10 vanity pounds. Okay, now I was listening to all of this and I was thinking, yes, but how many of the people that have actual diabetes have diabetes because they have weight problems, and then what happens to their weight problems and what happens to their diabetes as they're on the semaglutide? They start losing their weight problems. The first thing, if you have any sort of diabetes, or if you are gaining weight, the doctor is going to tell you run the risk of developing diabetes, type 1 and type the other things, right? Some people are born with it, I know, but I'm just speaking in big swaths of generality here. Well, now what do we know about semaglutide? Semaglutide has been proven, and again, I'm not a big trust the experts person, but the more and more research that's come out, the actual research that's been done, and now of the millions and millions of people that are using it, is fascinating. And specifically, not only does it stave your appetite, cause you to want to eat less, and you do lose weight because your body then starts burning its stores of fat. Not only that, but I have friends, Julie and I know people, who have literally been able to, in a lot of ways, save their lives because they have gotten their cholesterol levels under control. They have stopped taking are they called lipids? The things
I think that's right.
Yeah, they have stopped taking these drugs that have other nasty ramifications, the side effects from taking some of these things. It was, one thing led to another. So they're taking these semaglutide, which is a naturally occurring substance in our bodies, and then they're essentially making it so that they have less cravings, they eat less food. But here's what's really fascinating. It also is causing people to want to consume alcohol less and drugs less. It's also causing people who had gambling issues to not want to gamble as much. It staves off some people who have an addiction to taking risk in an unhealthy way.
It's like a bad habit manager.
It's the tics, the head scratching, the nail chewing, all these psychological things that somehow are being reduced or eliminated in a lot of people's lives because of semaglutide. That's an amazing thing. So much so, the FDA, for those of you who are typing away that somehow we're stealing away the semaglutide reserves for people that are just wanting to lose their 10 vanity pounds. We had people saying that to us too in our comments. The FDA just approved semaglutide for people that are drug and alcohol recovery.
Yeah.
And you're also going to see other types of drugs for people that have opioid addictions that are currently considered class 1, I think it's Schedule A or Schedule, I don't remember. They're illegal, okay? All these things are going to start changing the very nature of healthcare, changing the very nature of longevity, and frankly, in a lot of ways, it's going to improve people's lives because they're going to be able to spend more time, being alive, being healthy, and spending less time, frankly, on medical bills. Medical bills are the number one cause of bankruptcy. If all of a sudden there's less medical bills and there's all of a sudden less bankruptcy, don't you think that is another unintended consequence of people taking semaglutide? You guys get it? These are the types of things that when you start opening your mind to it and move away from the dogmatic headlines that are, for whatever reason, people seem to be addicted to, and you start then feeling and being in alignment with the fact that we are in a blessed time. And what we're going to see is a convergence. Some people are calling it, you've heard this, Julie, they're calling it a golden era, right?
Yep.
So we're going to see a convergence of technology, of frankly, people reconnecting with their faith, and all these other types of things that are going to start happening, which is going to make this an unbelievably, more than we can possibly imagine, blessed time to be alive. Hopefully you guys are feeling that. And if you're not, maybe unplug from some of the things that are causing you to maybe experience, low levels of malaise and depression even, right? Does that make sense?
It does. I think that in summary, be your own truth seeker. Have your own back. That's what we're really talking about. And I think some of the talk about a new golden era comes from new levels of transparency. There's a lot of like, what's really going on coming out, from different sources. But make sure that you're your own best advocate and do your research, and don't be complacent and just believe whatever headlines are floating past you. Use those filters. Is it absolutely true? Well, I don't know. Can I prove that it's to myself that it's 100% true? What if it is? What if it isn't? You've got to ask really good questions. And I think that's what makes going forward a really exciting time to be alive.
Well, and hopefully you guys are appreciating the fact that we're taking a risk by maybe offending some people because we're talking about things other than what we normally talk about. But, at the end of the day, we are always looking to expand our thinking because it causes us to be better coaches for you guys. It causes us to be better podcast presenters. It causes us to be better husbands and wives and fathers and members of society.
Yep.
And maybe in some ways we seeded some thoughts and some conversations you'll be having with yourself. So yes, give us some feedback. Let us know what you think. If you have any show-specific topics that you want us to explore, if you're interested in it, chances are we're interested in it as well. Just message us directly on Instagram. It's at Tim and Julie Harris. In the meantime, you guys have a fantastic day, and we'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.